If you feel heavy around someone, listen carefully, because that feeling is not random emotional weakness or overthinking. It is a message, a quiet but persistent signal rising from a deeper place within you that words often fail to explain. It shows up as exhaustion without effort, confusion without cause, or discomfort without conflict. You smile, you talk, you stay polite, but something inside you feels pressed down, dimmed, or unsettled. This message is not meant to scare you, it is meant to awaken you. And the moment you learn how to listen, your entire perception of people, energy, and connection will begin to change. Many people have been taught to ignore this inner heaviness. They've been told to be strong, be kind, or not judge too quickly. But discernment is not judgment, it is awareness. When your spirit feels heavy around someone, it is responding to something your mind has not yet identified. Energy speaks before language. Your body notices what your logic tries to excuse. That heaviness is often the first warning sign that something in the dynamic is misaligned, draining, or quietly destructive to your peace. The most dangerous part about this feeling is not the heaviness itself. It is how easily it can be normalized. You start telling yourself that you're tired, sensitive, or imagining things. You convince yourself that discomfort is just part of relationships. But what if it's not? What if that weight you feel is your intuition recognizing a threat your eyes cannot yet see? Many people lose years of their life because they ignored the first whisper before it became a scream. Pay attention to how your body reacts before your mind starts explaining things away. Do your shoulders tense when they enter the room? Does your energy drop after conversations that seem harmless on the surface? Do you feel the need to defend, perform, or shrink around them? These are not coincidences. Your system is responding to something that does not align with your well-being, and the longer you ignore it, the heavier it becomes. Heaviness is often misunderstood as negativity, but it is actually information. It is the language of discernment. Just as pain alerts you to physical injury, emotional and spiritual heaviness alerts you to relational danger. Not everyone who drains you is loud, abusive, or obvious. Some drains are subtle. They hide behind charm, familiarity, or shared history. That is why the signal comes quietly at first, so only those who listen carefully will notice. There are people who smile while slowly emptying you, people who speak kindly but leave you feeling smaller, people who do nothing wrong, yet something about them consistently leaves you feeling off-center. This is not accidental. Energy exchange is real. Some people draw strength by being near others, even unconsciously. And when you are sensitive, aware, or emotionally deep, you often become a source, whether you consent to it or not. You were never meant to feel heavy around someone who is good for you. Growth may challenge you, truth may confront you, but peace should never feel oppressive. When connection is healthy, it brings clarity, not confusion, expansion, not constriction, calm, not chronic tension. If someone's presence repeatedly leaves you drained, anxious, or dull, that is not love, loyalty, or patience. It is a warning waiting to be acknowledged. This is why learning to listen is critical, not to your fears, but to your inner knowing, the voice that doesn't shout, the feeling that doesn't argue, the heaviness that doesn't accuse, but quietly asks, why do you feel this way every time? That question alone can save you from emotional exhaustion, spiritual depletion, and long-term damage. Many people stay in heavy environments because they mistake familiarity for safety. They stay because walking away feels harder than enduring discomfort. But heaviness is not meant to be carried, it is meant to be investigated. The moment you stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Everything shifts. This message is not about cutting people off impulsively. It is about becoming honest with yourself. It is about recognizing that peace is not a luxury, it is a necessity. And anyone or anything that consistently robs you of it deserves your attention, not your denial. The sooner you learn this, the sooner you reclaim your clarity, strength, and emotional sovereignty. If this resonates, it is because you have felt it before. that unexplained weight, that quiet dread, that invisible exhaustion. You are not imagining it. You are not broken. You are becoming aware. And awareness is the first step toward freedom. So before you dismiss that heaviness again, pause, listen, observe. Because what you feel around someone today can determine the direction of your life tomorrow. And the cost of ignoring this signal is always higher than the discomfort of acknowledging it. That heaviness you feel around someone rarely appears without a reason. It is not sudden and it is not random. It builds quietly, layer by layer, often long before you consciously notice it. At first, it feels like a slight discomfort, something you can brush off. But over time, it grows into emotional fatigue, mental fog, or a sense of pressure that follows you even after the interaction ends. This is because your inner system has already detected a mismatch between who you are becoming and what that person represents in your life. Every human interaction involves an exchange of words, emotions, intentions, and energy. When that exchange is balanced, you leave feeling neutral or uplifted. But when the exchange is one-sided, when someone consistently takes more than they give, your system begins to react. Heaviness is the result of that imbalance. It is what happens when you are pouring into someone who is not pouring back, or when you are shrinking yourself so someone else can remain comfortable. Sometimes the heaviness comes from unspoken tension, things left unsaid, truths buried to keep the peace. When you constantly censor yourself around someone, your thoughts, your emotions, your boundaries, you carry a weight that was never meant to be yours. The body remembers what the mouth suppresses, and eventually that suppressed truth manifests as discomfort, irritation, or exhaustion. There are also moments when heaviness appears because someone around you is not aligned with your growth. As you evolve, your tolerance for certain behaviors, conversations, and dynamics naturally decreases. What once felt normal now feels draining. What once felt familiar now feels restrictive. This does not mean anyone is evil. It means you are changing, and change often exposes incompatibility long before it shows up in obvious conflict. Another reason this feeling shows up is emotional manipulation, often subtle, rarely dramatic. It can look like guilt disguised as concern, control masked as care, or criticism wrapped in humor. You might not be able to explain why you feel off, but your system knows it is being slowly eroded. Manipulation doesn't always hurt loudly. Sometimes it wears you down quietly, one interaction at a time. Some people also project their unresolved pain onto those closest to them. When you are empathetic, emotionally available, or spiritually aware, you become a container for what others refuse to face within themselves. Over time, carrying what is not yours becomes exhausting. The heaviness you feel is the weight of emotions, expectations, or negativity that never belonged to you in the first place. Pay attention to patterns, not isolated moments, but repeated experiences. If every interaction leaves you questioning yourself, replaying conversations, or feeling less clear than before, that is not coincidence. Confusion is often the byproduct of unhealthy dynamics. Healthy connections bring understanding. Unhealthy ones leave you doubting your own perception. It is important to understand that your intuition does not communicate through logic. It communicates through sensation, tightness in the chest, a knot in the stomach, sudden fatigue, a desire to withdraw. These are signals, not flaws, and when you learn to respect them, you begin protecting your peace before damage occurs instead of after. Many people mistake endurance for strength. They believe staying in heavy environments proves loyalty, love, or maturity. But true strength is discernment. True maturity is knowing when something is costing you more than it is giving. You are not required to sacrifice your emotional health to keep others comfortable. The longer you stay where you feel heavy, the more disconnected you become from yourself. Your joy dulls, your clarity fades, your motivation weakens. This is not because you are losing yourself. It is because something around you is slowly pulling you away from who you truly are. And here is the truth most people avoid. Not everyone who feels heavy to you is meant to walk with you into your next season. Some people are only meant to be chapters, not the entire story. When you try to carry them beyond their season, the weight becomes unbearable. So if you've been wondering why your energy feels different around certain people now, the answer may be simple. You're listening more closely, and what you are hearing is the truth you once ignored. One of the clearest signs that the heaviness around someone is meaningful is how your body reacts before and after being with them. You may notice a sense of relief the moment you leave, as if you can finally breathe again. That relief is not imaginary. It is your system returning to balance after being under strain. When peace only arrives in someone's absence, that absence is telling you more than their presence ever could. Another sign is emotional depletion without explanation. You may not argue, disagree, or confront anything openly, yet you leave interactions feeling drained, dull, or disconnected. This happens when you are constantly adjusting yourself, your tone, your honesty, your reactions, to avoid discomfort or tension. Over time, this self-adjustment becomes self-abandonment, and your energy pays the price. Pay attention to how much mental space someone occupies after interactions. If you replay conversations, question your intentions, or feel the need to justify yourself long after the moment has passed, something is wrong. Healthy relationships do not trap your mind. They do not leave residue. When someone consistently lingers in your thoughts in a heavy way, it is often because boundaries have been crossed, even if subtly. You may also notice that your enthusiasm fades around them. Things that once excited you suddenly feel muted. You speak less freely. You share less deeply. This shrinking is not a coincidence. It is a survival response. When your inner system senses that openness is unsafe or unreciprocated, it pulls back to protect you. Another warning sign is the constant need to explain yourself. You feel misunderstood, even when you speak clearly. You feel unseen, even when you show up fully. This happens when someone listens to respond, control, or compare, not to understand. Over time, this dynamic erodes your confidence and replaces it with quiet frustration. Heaviness also shows up when there is a lack of mutual respect for boundaries. Your time, energy, and emotional capacity are treated as unlimited resources. When you give, it is expected. When you need space, it is questioned. This imbalance slowly teaches you that your needs matter less, and that lesson always comes with a heavy cost. Sometimes the sign is subtle envy masked as support, compliments that feel backhanded, encouragement that carries comparison, presence that feels competitive rather than collaborative. These dynamics are rarely acknowledged openly, but they are deeply felt. Your intuition notices when someone's energy shifts as you grow, succeed, or change. Another overlooked sign is how quickly your peace returns. When distance is created, a single day without interaction brings clarity. A short break brings relief. This contrast is revealing. If distance heals or presence disrupts, then presence deserves to be questioned. Many people ignore these signs because they don't want to seem unkind, dramatic, or sensitive. But honoring your inner signals is not cruelty. It is self-respect. The cost of ignoring them is far greater than the discomfort of acknowledging them. The heaviness intensifies when you stay silent too long. What begins as mild discomfort grows into resentment, fatigue, or emotional numbness. This is what happens when intuition is consistently ignored. It does not disappear. It escalates. You may begin to lose your sense of direction. Your decisions feel clouded. Your confidence weakens. This is not because you are incapable. It is because clarity cannot survive in environments that drain you. Peace is not just a feeling. It is a foundation for sound judgment. If you recognize these signs, do not rush to fix the other person. Fix your listening. The message has already been delivered. You just have to decide whether you are willing to hear it before the weight becomes too heavy to carry. One of the hardest truths to face is not that you feel heavy around someone, but that you felt it for a long time and chose to stay. Most people don't ignore their intuition because they don't feel it. They ignore it because acknowledging it would require change. And change threatens familiarity. It threatens routines, histories, and emotional investments that took years to build. You may tell yourself that leaving would be selfish, dramatic, or unnecessary. You convince yourself that everyone feels drained sometimes, that discomfort is normal, that you just need to be more patient or understanding. But patience without discernment becomes self-neglect. Understanding without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. Another reason people ignore heaviness is fear of being wrong. What if you misread the situation? What if you hurt someone who meant no harm? What if you're the problem? These questions keep you stuck, doubting yourself instead of trusting your perception. But intuition does not require proof, it requires honesty. There is also the weight of emotional obligation. Shared history, shared struggle, shared memories. You feel responsible for maintaining the connection even at the cost of your own peace. But history does not entitle anyone to unlimited access to you, and loyalty that costs your well-being is not loyalty, it is sacrifice without consent. Some people stay because they've been conditioned to prioritize a harmony over truth, to keep things smooth, to avoid confrontation, to carry discomfort silently. Over time, this conditioning teaches you to minimize your own experience. You learn to live with heaviness as if it were normal. Heaviness becomes especially confusing when the person is not overtly harmful. They may care in their own way, they may have moments of kindness, but inconsistency is its own form of instability. You should not have to endure emotional whiplash to justify staying connected. You may also stay because you see potential, who they could be, not who they consistently are. You hold on to future versions of people while sacrificing the present version of yourself. This hope can be powerful, but it can also become a trap. Over time, ignoring the heaviness creates internal conflict. One part of you wants peace, another part wants to keep things as they are. This tension drains you even more than the relationship itself. You are exhausted, not just by the person, but by the constant inner negotiation. This is when you begin to normalize the weight. You adjust, you cope, you survive. But survival is not the same as living, and heaviness is not the price of connection. It is the signal that something needs to change. You don't need a dramatic ending to honor your intuition. Sometimes awareness is enough to begin shifting how you engage. Distance does not always mean disappearance, it can mean protection. The moment you stop fighting, the feeling is the moment clarity begins to return. When you allow yourself to say, something here doesn't feel right, without judgment, without panic, without justification, your inner voice grows stronger. Heaviness stays as long as it is ignored, but the moment you acknowledge it begins to loosen its grip. Not because the situation has changed, but because you have finally chosen to listen. The moment you truly listen to the heaviness instead of fighting it, something subtle but powerful begins to change inside you. You stop forcing yourself to feel comfortable where you are not. You stop over-explaining your emotions. You stop bending your truth to fit someone else's expectations. Listening does not immediately remove the weight, but it gives you clarity about where it comes from, and clarity is the beginning of release. When you listen, you begin to notice how much of your energy has been spent managing other people's reactions instead of honoring your own needs. You realize how often you've silenced yourself to keep peace, how often you've ignored discomfort to avoid disappointment, and how often you've confused endurance with strength. This awareness can feel uncomfortable at first, but unlike heaviness, it brings light. Listening also changes how you move. You become more selective, more grounded, less reactive. You no longer rush to fill silence, fix dynamics, or explain your worth. You start observing instead of absorbing, and in that observation you reclaim energy that was never meant to be given away so freely. You may notice that once you honor the signal, the heaviness begins to lose its power over you. Not because the person changes, but because you stop allowing their presence to dictate your internal state. Boundaries begin forming quietly, not as walls, but as filters, and filters protect without hostility. This is when confidence begins to return, not loud confidence, not performative confidence, but calm certainty. You trust yourself more, you question yourself less, you stop asking others for permission to feel what you feel. And that inner alignment is something no external relationship can replace. Listening does not make you cold, distant, or selfish. It makes you honest. And honesty is the foundation of peace. When you finally listen to what your heaviness has been trying to tell you, you don't lose people, you lose confusion. Once you begin listening to the heaviness, distance naturally starts to form. Not always physically, but internally. You no longer rush to respond. You no longer feel obligated to show up at the same intensity. You begin conserving your energy without guilt. This distance is not punishment. It is protection. And protection is what allows your spirit to breathe again. You may notice that when you pull back, clarity increases, thoughts become cleaner, emotions settle. You remember who you were before the heaviness became normal. This is often when people realize how much weight they were carrying simply by staying too close to what drained them. Distance reveals truth. Some people respect it, others resist it. And their reaction tells you everything you need to know. Those who care about you will honor your space. Those who benefit from your exhaustion will question it. This contrast removes confusion without confrontation. You begin to understand that not everyone deserves the same level of access to you. Access is earned through consistency, respect, and safety, not history alone. When you protect your energy, you stop explaining your boundaries and start living them. This is also where emotional detachment begins, not indifference but neutrality. You stop internalizing moods that aren't yours. You stop feeling responsible for fixing what you didn't break. The heaviness fades because you are no longer carrying what never belonged to you. Protection teaches you something powerful. Peace is not found in pleasing everyone, but in honoring yourself. And once you experience peace again, you realize how expensive it was to live without it. Distance does not mean you are walking away in anger. It means you are walking toward clarity, and clarity is what keeps heaviness from returning. There comes a moment when the heaviness no longer feels confusing. It feels familiar, not because it belongs, but because you now recognize it instantly. You don't panic, you don't overthink, you simply observe. This is growth. This is what happens when awareness replaces denial. You no longer need to suffer to understand. Outgrowing the weight means you stop needing closure from people who never offered clarity. You stop waiting for apologies that will never come. You stop hoping someone will suddenly become safe when they have consistently shown you who they are. That acceptance does not harden you, it frees you. You begin to realize that heaviness was never meant to be permanent. It was a teacher. It showed you where your boundaries were weak, where your empathy was overextended, and where your silence was costing you peace. Once the lesson is learned, the weight loses its purpose. As you outgrow it, your energy changes. You become calmer, quieter, more grounded. You no longer react from emotion, you respond from clarity. And this shift is noticeable. Some people will feel it and respect it. Others will feel it and pull away. Both outcomes are confirmation that you are aligned. You also stop feeling the need to explain why certain spaces no longer feel right. You understand now that alignment does not require agreement. Your peace does not need witnesses, and your decisions do not need validation. What once drained you now simply informs you. The heaviness still speaks, but now it speaks briefly, clearly, and without control. You hear it, acknowledge it, and move accordingly. This is emotional sovereignty. When you outgrow the weight, you don't become distant from life, you become closer to yourself. And nothing is more powerful than a person who knows when to stay, when to step back, and when to walk forward without regret. At some point, you must accept this truth without fear or guilt. Not every connection is meant to feel light, and not every heavy feeling is meant to be endured. Some heaviness is a signal that your soul has outgrown an environment your mind is still trying to justify. And growth does not ask for permission, it simply reveals what no longer fits. You are not meant to feel drained just to prove love. You are not meant to feel tense just to maintain connection. You are not meant to feel small just to keep access. Peace is not something you earn through suffering. It is something you protect through awareness. And the moment you stop romanticizing endurance, you begin choosing alignment. There will be people who never understand why you changed, why you pulled back, why you became quieter, firmer, more selective. Let them misunderstand. Clarity does not always look kind to those who benefited from your confusion. And silence, when rooted in self-respect, speaks louder than explanation ever could. The heaviness you once felt was never meant to define you. It was meant to refine you. It sharpened your discernment. It strengthened your boundaries. It taught you the difference between familiarity and safety, between attachment and alignment, between love and tolerance. And once that lesson is complete, the weight no longer has power over you. You begin to move differently now. You listen more. You rush less. You choose environments that restore you instead of drain you. You trust the quiet signals before they become loud consequences, and in doing so, you protect your future without bitterness or regret. Remember this: your body, your mind, and your spirit are always communicating with you. When something feels heavy, it is not weakness. It is wisdom trying to surface. And the more you honor it, the less suffering you invite into your life. You were never meant to carry what weighs you down. You were meant to recognize it, understand it, and walk away from it with clarity. Growth does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like peace, returning quietly after a long absence. So if you feel heavy around someone, listen carefully, not with fear, not with anger, but with honesty. Because the moment you listen, you reclaim yourself, and nothing is more powerful than a person who finally trusts what they feel.